important is Black History Month to you?
Very important.
Right.
Very important. You know, it's always been important for me as a young man growing up to honor Black History Month, but it's taken special residence now since I've been in Congress. As I think about kind of the you know, my forefathers, right? I mean, the quote I often talked about when I was running for office was that us young folks stand on the shoulders of giants.
Correct.
And I've always thought that was the case. It's very different to be celebrating Black History Month while I'm in Congress for the first time, serving with some of those giants, yourself included. So,
what about in terms of being the first African American from the state of Colorado?
Yeah, it's
right.
Yeah,
the first.
Right. The first. Yeah. You know, I mean, it's an achievement, but I think it's again reflective of two things. One, just how far we've come, right, in Colorado, where there isn't a large Black population, 4 or 5% of the state, that the people in the state would choose to put their confidence in me. So I think it says a lot about them in terms of being forward-looking. But again, it dovetails with this second point about why honoring the month is so important, because I may be the first in Colorado, but you know, I'm in a long line of firsts, in these other states, and some of the people whom I served with, or I'm serving with now here in Congress, you know, they were here when there were only 4 or 5 Black members of Congress.
That's true.
So it's it's meaningful, and again, it harkens back to that first point I made about the people who are serving.
Well, what I'm pleased about, I'm the 5th from the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. The first was Robert N.C. Nix, who got elected in 1958, and then Congressman Gray, who became Budget Committee Chairman and was the whip. He's the first African American to be whip right from Pennsylvania. So being in this office is special because I haven't been here since he was whip. So then you had him, and then you had Congressman Lou Blackwell, and then Congressman Shaka Fattah. So in Pennsylvania since 1958, I'll be the 5th African American congressman from the history of the state. You know, the
different districts or often?
Often the same district, primarily, often the state. It's only been one African American. It's like 12 million people in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And it's only about 10% African Americans.
So
it's only 10% in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. So it's, I mean, Pennsylvania's a rural state, right? You got Philadelphia, you got Pittsburgh. And there may be some similarities to Colorado.
Yeah, there's
some similarities there too. So you see some of that.
I mean, it's interesting the fact that you were the 5th.
Right.
We had our Martin Luther King Day celebration in Moray. Denver has one of the biggest parades in the United States.
Right.
I said to the crowd, it's great that I'm the first.
Right.
The real point of the work is to make sure I'm not the last.
That's correct.
And so your point about Pennsylvania, that you're now the 5th, again, speaks to that.
Well, you know, I always have thought the world of Colorado because I go back, I think I said this, Regis Groff.
Yeah, of course.
Who was, a state senator?
State senator, and then ran for lieutenant governor.
Ran for lieutenant governor. I remember him because I was in the legislature for many, many years. And I knew him. He was a good guy. So, you know, Colorado, I've always respected it a great deal in terms of, you know, it seems to be receptive in terms of African American. Can you tell a little bit about that?
I think that's right. I mean, I think it's also in large part because we've had these giants in the state who are just incredible public servants. So they were, you know, people like Regis Groff, his son, Peter Groff, who was a mentor of mine, who was the first Black Senate president in Colorado history. And you know, some other folks you might, Gloria Tanner.
Yes, Gloria Tanner.
First Black state senator.
I remember Gloria.
She just, you know, wonderful woman, and you know, very impactful. Had a lot of impact on my life and my, you know, journey to the Congress. So we, as a state, have been very good, and as a community, I think, of uplifting voices that then, you know, have been given this next opportunity.
So how many people in Colorado?
So there are about 5.5 million, give or take.
And about 5% African American?
About 4%.
4% African American? The district I have is 55% African American. Is that right? In the district, 55% African American.
What's the biggest city?
Philadelphia. I represent half of Philadelphia with 2 other congressmen I represent. So, I mean, I keep telling people that's where it all started, you know, right there in Philadelphia. So, I mean, it's an old city, been around a long time, you know, a lot of history there, and obviously, you know, abolitionists, Dr. Martin Luther King, you know, visited, came and went to school in Chester County, and he went to divinity school there, and came, you know, it was a lot of ministers who came out of Philadelphia. Philadelphia influence really is a lot what's taking place here in the United States Congress, because the first chairman of the Ways and Means Committee was from Philadelphia.
Is that right?
Yeah, from Philadelphia. His name was Thomas Fitzsimons. The first
I can tell you're on the Ways and Means
right
Committee.
there. So he was on it. And
yeah.
Obviously,
for a long time.
And obviously African Americans have played a great deal. I mean, you can talk about Paul Robeson, Reverend Leon Sullivan, C. Dolores Tucker. Those are just some names that really laid the groundwork to where I am today. Very similar to you. They laid the groundwork for me.
How is it to serve? I mean, you know, some of those names you mentioned, Dolores Tucker. You know, you're a young man,
right.
You know, you've been around.
Correct.
And so I guess I'm curious about how it is to serve in the Congress, having lived through the civil rights movement. You know, for someone like me, I was born in 1984. Long after a lot of these battles had been fought and won.
Well, one of the things that I'm most impressed in both of us is seeing John Lewis in public and walking across the Pettit Bridge. I was 11 years old when John Lewis walked across that Pettit Bridge, and I remember watching him on TV with CBS and seeing him, but now serving in the Congress with him. And then I had the opportunity to go visit Alabama, I think it was last year, and then walking across that Pettit Bridge was a real feeling with John Lewis and what John Lewis meant. And when you think about it, John Lewis is the last one who's there with Dr. Martin Luther King.
That's right.
And that connection that he brings to all of us. So I always like to say, let's go get in some good trouble.
That's right.
And that resonates with me in terms of that. But you too, I mean, you seem like, one thing I respect a lot about you is you don't forget that history. I noticed that about you.
He's embodiment of what it means to be a good public
and I think what he also shows is civility, something that unfortunately seems to be lacking in politics. And I don't think anybody in this body has that level of respect, because when you think about it, what he went through, and you know, getting his head busted, walking across that bridge, going to jail, and I think it does a lot for us to where we are here today in the 21st century as a mind. And then, you know, we forget about Shirley Chisholm,
of course,
and what she meant to all of us. You know, she was truly somebody who laid the groundwork too.
Yeah. How long were you in legislature?
I was in the legislature for 36 years.
In
the Pennsylvania legislature. As a matter of fact, I held the position that Ben Franklin held as the chairman of the Appropriation Committee, which was the Ways and Means Committee, and then evolved to the Appropriation Committee. So I was the first African American to ever be chairman of that particular committee. And you know, Maxine and I knew her, and
how old
Bobby
were you when you got
Scott.
elected?
I was 25 years old. I was 25 years old.
What year would it have been? Not that I'm
1980. 1980 when I got elected.
I mean, you know, I guess I'm curious, given your journey, because I'm 34, and so a lot of people, you know, getting elected at 34 will make that as though it's a big deal, and I had to remind them that it's 2018, 2019 now. The country has changed a lot.
Correct.
But being elected as a 25-year-old black man in 1980, at least from I wasn't born yet, but my understanding of the country in 1980, it's a lot different than today.
That's true. Reagan was president at that particular time, and it was a different world. And there were some challenges in 1980, but you know, as I look at you, and for the Congressional Black Caucus to be at the number of 55, 55 is fantastic when you think about it. And 55 of 435 people, that says a lot for how much we've grown. Because in 1971, when the Congressional Black Caucus started, Robert N.C. Nix was one of the founding people in 1971. So I was just coming out of high school when the Congressional Black Caucus was just starting, and seeing how it has grown.
Did you ever imagine back in 1980, 79, running, that you're going to be serving in Congress?
I never thought about that. I never thought about I'd be serving with John Lewis and Karen Bass and Bobby Scott and Maxine Waters and you know, Jim Clyburn. I never thought about that, and I'm very proud to serve with them, because more than ever before, for the sake of this democracy, we are absolutely needed in this process.